Chapter 2 Biological Classification. Since the dawn of civilization, there has been many attempts to classify living organisms. It was done instinctively, not using criteria that was scientific but born out of a need to use organisms for our own use, for food, shelter, and clothing. Aristotle was the first or earliest to attempt a more scientific basis for classification. He used simple morphological characters to classify plants into trees, shrubs, and herbs. He also divided animals into two groups, those which has red blood and those didn't. In Linnaeus' time of a two kingdom classification system with Plantae and Animalia kingdoms were developed that includes all the plants and animals respectively. This system did not distinguish between the eukaryotes and prokaryotes and unicellular and multicellular organisms and photosynthetic green algae and non-photosynthetic fungi organisms. Classification of organisms into plants and animals was easily done and very easy to understand, but a large number of organisms did not fall into either of the category. Hence, the two kingdom system classification used for the long time was found inadequate. Besides, gross morphology, a need was also felt for including other characteristics like cell structure, nature of wall, mode of nutrition, habitat, methods of reproduction, and evolutionary relationships, etc. Classification systems for the living organisms have hence undergo several changes over the time through the plant and animal kingdoms have constant been under all the different systems. The understanding of what organisms he included under these kingdoms has been changing. The number and the nature of other kingdoms has been understood differently by different scientists over the time. We can see the characteristics of the five kingdom. The five kingdom classification consists of monerans, protists, fungi, and plantae and animalians. The cell types in the Monera is prokaryotes, in the Protista eukaryotes, and remaining fungi, plantae, and animalia also common eukaryotics. While coming to the monerans, the cell wall is non-cellulosic and polysaccharide plus amino acid combination. While coming to the Protista, the cell wall is just present in some of the organisms. While in the fungi, the cell wall is present with chitin, and in plantae, the cell wall is cellulose, and there is no cell wall in animalia. In monerans, there is no nuclear membrane, but Protista, fungi, and plantae and animalian, the nuclear membrane is present. In the same way, the body organizations, the moneran is cellular and Protista is also a cellular. Next, fungi is multicellular and some loosened tissues. While coming to the plantae, it having tissues and organs. In animalia, its tissue, organ, and organ systems are present. The mode of nutrition you can see here. Monerans autotrophic and heterotrophic. The protistans is autotrophic and heterotrophic. Fungi is heterotrophic, saprophyte and parasite. In plantae it is autotrophic, photosynthetic, and animalia is heterotrophic, etc. You can see here. Next, while coming to R.H. Whitaker in 1969, he proposed a five kingdom classification. The kingdom consists of monerans, protists, fungi, plantae, and animalia. The main criterion for classification that he includes cell structure, body organization, mode of nutrition, reproduction, and phylogenetic relationships. In you can see in the table 2.1 just we now discussed. Give us a comparative amount of different characteristics of five kingdom. The three domain system has been proposed that divides a kingdom monera into two domains. Leaving the remaining eukaryotic kingdoms in the third domains, there has been six kingdom classification in the three domain system. You will learn about this in higher classes. Let us look at the five kingdom classification to understand the issue and considerations that influenced the classification system. Earlier classification systems includes bacteria, blue-green algae, fungi, mosses and ferns, and gymnosperms and angiosperms under the plants. The characteristics that unified this whole kingdom was that all the organisms included had a cell wall in their cells. This placed together groups which wildly differed in the other characteristics. It brought together the prokaryotic bacteria and the blue-green algae, it means cyanobacteria, with other groups which were eukaryotics. It has also grouped that unicellular organisms and multicellular ones. You can, for example, it is Chlamydomonas and Spirogyra were placed under algae. The classification did not differentiate between the heterotrophic group fungi and the autotrophic green plants. Though they also showed a characteristic difference in their cell wall composition, the fungi had a chitin in their cell walls on the walls, while the green plants has a cellulosic cell wall. When such characteristics were considered, the fungi was placed in a separate kingdom. It's known as kingdom fungi. All the prokaryotes organisms were grouped together under monerans, and unicellular eukaryotes organisms were placed in the kingdom protista. Kingdom protista has brought together Chlamydomonas chlorella, earlier placed in the algae within the plants, and both having cell walls, with paramecium and amoeba, which were earlier placed in the animal kingdom, which lacks cell wall. It has put together organisms which in earlier classifications were placed in different kingdoms. This happened because the criterion for the classification system is changed. This kind of changes will take place in future too, depending on the improvement in our understandings of the characteristics and evolutionary relationships. Over the time, an attempt has been made to evolve a classification system which reflects not only morphological, physiological, and reproductive similarities, but is also phylogenetic based on evolutionary relationships. In this chapter, we will study the characteristics of kingdom monerans, protista, fungi of Whittaker classification system of classification. The kingdoms Plantae and Animalia are commonly referred to as a plant and animal kingdoms, respectively. We will deal with them separately in the chapter 3 and 4.